What if I told you there was an NHL player who was so good at both offense and defense that his teammates called him Captain Serious, a player who became the third youngest captain in NHL history, but still led his team to 3 Stanley Cup championships and won 2 Olympic gold medals? This player is, of course, none other than Jonathan Toews. To find out how he was able to become one of the greatest leaders in hockey, despite his young age, we need to go back to Winnipeg, Canada, in the early 1990s. Before we continue, please take a second to hit that like button. Each of these videos takes hundreds of hours of research, writing, and editing to bring you the most accurate and compelling stories of hockey's greatest players. Your support helps us continue creating this content. And if you haven't already, subscribe to see more in-depth profiles like this one. Throughout this time, Toews and his younger brother David were developing their skills under the watchful eyes of their parents, Brian and Andre, who built a backyard rink every winter where the boys would spend hours perfecting their game. His father instilled in Jonathan's mind that being a complete hockey player meant mastering every aspect of the game, not just scoring goals, but back-checking, face-offs, and defensive positioning. This resonated with Toews, and he immediately started using this approach throughout his youth hockey days. He found immense success using this method, even earning the nickname Mr. Perfect from his minor hockey coaches. Although scouts were impressed by his maturity and all-around game, many focused on flashier players who put up bigger scoring numbers. Toews wasn't the type to dangle through 4 defenders or score highlight reel goals. He was the player who did everything right, made smart decisions, and made his teammates better. At age 15, he made the difficult decision to leave home and attend Shattuck St. Mary's, the famous hockey prep school in Minnesota that had produced NHL stars like Sidney Crosby. It was his first time away from Winnipeg for an extended period, and despite excelling on the ice, homesickness hit him hard during that first year away from his family. That was until his coach, Tom Ward, recognized Toews' leadership qualities and began giving him more responsibilities both on and off the ice, Ward later said. He understood the game at a level most adults don't reach. He didn't just want to be good himself, he wanted everyone around him to be better. With this added responsibility, Toews found purpose beyond just his own performance, helping him overcome his desire to return home. His maturity at Shattuck caught the attention of North Dakota's Fighting Sioux, who offered him a scholarship to play college hockey. I learned so much during that time. I learned how to be responsible, how to lead by example, and how important it is to do the little things right every single day, Toews would later reflect. With this disciplined approach to the game, he excelled at North Dakota, and after just 2 impressive college seasons, he felt ready to make the jump to the next level, the NHL. Then, after an outstanding sophomore season at North Dakota where he scored 18 goals and 46 points in just 34 games, he was selected 3rd overall by the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2006 NHL draft. But Toews made the surprising decision to return to college for 1 more year to further develop his game before jumping to the pros, a move that raised eyebrows but showcased his patience and commitment to being fully prepared for the NHL. His first NHL game finally came on October 10th, 2007 against the San Jose Sharks, a moment he had dreamed about since childhood. On his very first shot in his very first game, Toews scored his very first NHL goal. Racing down the right wing, he fired a perfect shot past Sharks goaltender Evgeny Nabokov. The rookie immediately showed he belonged, becoming just the 3rd player in Blackhawks history to score in his NHL debut. When that first one went in, it was just pure excitement, Toews would later recall. Everything happens so fast in your first game. Your adrenaline is through the roof. But when that puck went in, it felt like time stood still for a second. This impressive debut was just the beginning of a stellar rookie campaign. Despite missing 16 games with a knee injury, Toews finished with 24 goals and 54 points in 64 games. His impact was immediate on a young Blackhawks team that hadn't made the playoffs since 2002. The organization saw something special in the 19-year-old from Winnipeg, not just his skill, but his work ethic, attention to detail, and natural leadership ability. The Blackhawks were in the midst of a massive rebuild after years at the bottom of the standings. The once proud Original Six franchise had fallen so far that home games weren't even televised locally, and the United Center often sat half-empty. But alongside fellow rookie Patrick Kane, Toews began to change the culture in Chicago. His serious approach to practice, preparation, and professionalism earned him immediate respect in the locker room, Veterans twice his age found themselves looking to the teenager for leadership, both vocally and by example. Chicago finished Toews' rookie season just 3 points shy of a playoff spot, a dramatic improvement from previous years. The foundation was being laid for something special, and at the center of it all was the quiet kid from Winnipeg who played the game with an intensity and completeness that belied his young age. I think Jonathan has brought a level of professionalism that is rarely seen in someone his age, said Blackhawks general manager Dale Talon. He's someone who raises the standard for everyone around him. Sure enough, when the 2008-09 season began, the Blackhawks made a shocking announcement. They named 20-year-old Jonathan Toews as their new captain, making him the third youngest captain in NHL history. It was an enormous responsibility for such a young player, and one that immediately put a target on his back. This was his moment to truly lead the franchise forward. However, the pressure of wearing the C for an Original Six franchise proved to be a wake-up call for the young star. All season long, Toews struggled to find the scoring touch he'd shown as a rookie. His production dipped to just 34 points in his first 52 games, and he went through a brutal 12-game stretch in January where he managed just a single point. For the first time in his hockey life, Toews was experiencing a prolonged slump. Media questions focused less on the team's improvement and more on whether the Blackhawks had made a mistake giving the captaincy to someone so young. I felt like I was letting everyone down, Toews later admitted. I was trying to be the perfect captain, the perfect player, and it was weighing on me every single day. After a particularly frustrating loss to Vancouver in February, Toews knew he needed to make a change, and fast. The coach told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Your teammates don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be yourself," Toews recalled. The mental coach worked with him to develop pre-game routines to manage pressure and focus on the process rather than results. Now, being relieved from the immense pressure he put on himself, Toews was able to play freely for the first time as captain. What's the biggest difference between the Jonathan Toews of early 2009 and the Jonathan Toews now? A reporter asked in March. "I think I've stopped trying to be someone I'm not," Toews responded. "I realize that being captain isn't about changing who you are. It's about being the best version of yourself and helping others do the same. Whatever it may have been, it worked." Toews caught fire in the final 25 games of the season, scoring 13 goals and 34 points during that stretch, exactly matching his production from the previous 52 games. His late-season surge helped the Blackhawks reach the playoffs for the first time since 2002, and once there, the captain elevated his game even further. Toews led the team to the Western Conference Finals, scoring crucial goals in each playoff round before they ultimately fell to the Detroit Red Wings in 5 games. For Toews, it was a painful end to the season, but the lessons learned about leadership would prove invaluable in the seasons to come. So, with this newfound mindset, he shifted his focus to the 2009-10 season. Now being the established leader of the team, his goal was clear: bring the Stanley Cup back to Chicago for the first time since 1961. It wasn't going to be an easy task, especially with the Detroit Red Wings still dominating their division. But Toews put his head down and got to work, establishing himself as one of the NHL's elite two-way centers, month after month, regularly playing against opponents' top lines while still producing offensively. His full transformation as a player was on display at the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Competing for Team Canada, Toews was initially slotted as the 13th forward, essentially a spare part. But by the gold medal game against the United States, Canadian coach Mike Babcock had elevated him to the first line. Toews opened the scoring in the final and was named best forward of the entire Olympic tournament, an astonishing achievement for a 21-year-old playing alongside superstars like Sidney Crosby and Jerome Iginla. He returned to Chicago with a gold medal and a new nickname bestowed by Canadian media, Captain Clutch. This Olympic success fueled Toews for the remainder of the NHL season. He recorded a career-high 25 game point streak, the third longest in Blackhawks history. During this stretch, he wasn't just scoring, he was dominating in every facet of the game. His face-off percentage soared to 57.3%, ranking him among the league's top 5 centers. His defensive prowess became so respected that opposing coaches began keeping their top-scoring lines off the ice whenever Toews jumped over the boards. He's become the player that other teams have to game plan around, Blackhawks coach Joel Quenneville said, and not just for his offense, for everything he does. When the playoffs arrived, Toews elevated his game to an even higher level. He scored 29 points in 22 playoff games including crucial goals in each round. In the first round against Nashville, with Chicago trailing 4-3 and less than a minute remaining in Game 5, Toews won a face-off, fought through 2 defenders, and set up the tying goal with 13.6 seconds left. They went on to win in overtime. "That's what makes Jonathan special," teammate Patrick Sharp said after the game. "When things look bleakest, he finds another level most players don't have." His outstanding playoff performance earned him the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP, making him the second youngest player ever to win the award. More importantly, he achieved his goal of bringing the Stanley Cup back to Chicago. At just 22 years old, Toews had already accomplished what many NHL players spend their entire careers chasing: Olympic gold and a Stanley Cup championship. For him, it was an impressive demonstration of how seriously he took his role as captain and how completely he had mastered every aspect of the game. Yet leading up to the 2013 season, Toews and the Blackhawks faced new challenges. After their 2010 Cup victory, salary cap constraints forced Chicago to trade away key players like Dustin Byfuglien, Andrew Ladd, and Antti Niemi. The team was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs in both 2011 and 2012, leading many around the league to believe their championship window had closed. Something needed to change, and that's why there was added pressure facing the club as they entered the lockout-shortened 2013 season. With this in mind, Toews got to work. When the season finally began in January after the labor dispute, he led the Blackhawks to one of the most remarkable starts in NHL history: a 24-game point streak, 21-0-3, to open the season. This shattered the previous NHL record and immediately re-established Chicago as a championship contender. Throughout this historic streak, Toews was relentless, winning 59.1% of his face-offs and posting a +12 plus-minus rating in those 24 games alone. After the Blackhawks secured the President's Trophy with the league's best record, they entered the playoffs as favorites but quickly found themselves in trouble. In the second round against Detroit, Chicago fell behind 3-1 in the series, facing elimination in Game 5 at home. Before the team took the ice, Toews stood in the locker room and delivered a speech teammates would later call the turning point of their season. "This isn't how our story ends," defenseman Brent Seabrook recalled Toews saying. "We didn't come this far to go out like this." The Blackhawks rallied to win Game 5 by a score of 4-1, with Toews assisting on 2 goals. They squeaked out a 4-3 win in Game 6, and then in Game 7, trailing 1-0 in the third period, Toews won a crucial defensive zone face-off that led directly to the tying goal. Chicago would win in overtime, completing the comeback from a 3-1 series deficit. Down 3-1 to Detroit, Jonathan refused to let us lose, goaltender Corey Crawford said. His determination in those games was unlike anything I've ever seen. After dispatching the defending champion Los Angeles Kings in the Western Conference Finals, the Blackhawks faced the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Final. Game 6 in Boston became an instant classic, with Chicago trailing 2-1 late in the third period and their season on the line. Toews set up Brian Bickle for the tying goal with just 1 minute and 16 seconds remaining. Incredibly, just 17 seconds later, Dave Ballin scored to give Chicago a 3-2 lead. The Blackhawks held on for the final minute to secure their second Stanley Cup in 4 years. 17 seconds, Doc Emrick exclaimed on the broadcast. 17 seconds apart, and the Blackhawks have turned this series completely around. This resilience defined Toews and the Blackhawks, who would capture a third championship in 2015, making them the closest thing to a dynasty in the salary cap era. In the deciding Game 6 against Tampa Bay, Toews assisted on the opening goal and was on the ice defending a 1-goal lead in the final minutes. When the final horn sounded, he became the only active player in the NHL with 3 Stanley Cup championships as captain. "It's hard to compare the 3, Toews said after hoisting the cup for the 3rd time. "The first one will always be special because of what it meant to Chicago. The second one proved we could rebuild and still win. This third one, though, this one was the hardest to win, and maybe that's what makes it so sweet." Toews' impact on hockey was substantial. While flashier players like Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby often grabbed headlines with spectacular goals, Toews built his reputation on consistency and completeness. In fact, his defensive skills were so respected that he won the Selke Trophy as the NHL's best defensive forward in 2013, the same year he finished with a career-best +28 rating. Coaches around the league frequently used video of Toews' positioning and stick work to teach young players the correct way to play center. The phrase, Like a Taves was even coined by hockey analysts, meaning to play with equal commitment to both offense and defense. Former NHL coach Ken Hitchcock said, "If every player competed like Jonathan Taves, coaching would be the easiest job in the world." He finished his Blackhawks career with 345 goals, 470 assists, and a legacy as the only captain in franchise history to lift the Stanley Cup 3 times. "Hockey isn't about being the most skilled player on the ice," Taves said in his Jersey retirement speech. "It's about being the player who makes everyone else better. That's what I tried to be every single night." With a career built on leadership, determination, and a complete game, Taves cemented his place as one of hockey's great captains and champions. But on the other side of the ice, do you want to learn about a player who took the exact opposite approach to hockey stardom? A player who focused purely on offensive skill and could dangle through entire teams single-handedly? Then click the video on your screen to find out how Pavel Datsyuk became the magic man of hockey. If you enjoyed learning about Jonathan Taves' journey and leadership, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about hockey's greatest players. Drop a comment below letting us know which hockey legend you want to see featured next. Thanks for watching.